Hey everyone, so I want to start by saying this isn't easy to talk about. This story is still raw and honestly the way my son behaved still sends a chill down my spine. I'm Sophia and I'm just going to lay out exactly what happened because trust me, this is the kind of twisted family drama you only think happens in movies. Imagine this. It was a Tuesday morning, bright and early, and I was making my usual cup of coffee. Everything felt normal, domestic, you know? But then this sharp, agonizing pain ripped through my side. Unlike anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't just a cramp. It felt like something was genuinely failing inside me. I nearly dropped the mug. I managed to call my son Logan. Logan is my only child, and despite us having a complicated relationship, which we'll get into later, I figured in a health emergency he'd be there. He lives maybe 20 minutes away, works from home most of the time, and he has a reliable car. I remember my voice shaking as I told him, "Logan, I think I need to go to the emergency room right now. The pain is really bad." He sighed. Not a gasp of worry, not a frantic "I'm coming," but an exasperated put-upon sigh. It was the sound of someone whose carefully planned schedule was being interrupted by a faulty appliance, not his own mother facing a medical crisis. "Mom, seriously? Can't you just take an Uber? I have that huge client meeting in an hour and I can't be late." This is a crucial pitch. I leaned against the counter, clutching my side, trying to breathe through the waves of pain. "Logan, please. I can barely stand up. I need help getting there and I don't want to go through this alone." He eventually relented, but you could hear the resentment dripping from every word. "Fine, Mom. But we have to be quick. I mean it. I can't waste all morning sitting in the waiting room." He showed up looking annoyed, dressed in a sharp blazer over a designer t-shirt, already checking his watch the second he walked through the door. The drive to the ER was silent, except for the occasional groan I couldn't hold back. He kept his eyes glued to the road, occasionally glancing down at his phone for emails, acting like I was just cargo he was dropping off at the airport. There was zero comfort, zero empathy. We got to the emergency room entrance. I was barely able to shuffle my feet to the registration desk. I checked in and a nurse quickly brought me back to the triage area because the pain rating I gave was so high. Logan, meanwhile, planted himself in one of the hard plastic chairs in the waiting room, pulling out his laptop and immediately getting to work. A few minutes later, a doctor saw me. They ran blood tests, took a scan, and told me they suspected gallstones, which they explained could be incredibly painful and might require surgery. I was alone in a small cubicle wearing a thin paper gown, feeling scared and vulnerable. I texted Logan, "Doctor thinks it might be gallstones. Might need surgery. Can you come back here?" I waited. No reply. 5 minutes went by. 10. Finally, my phone buzzed. His response, "Look, Mom, I told you I have huge things going on. I can't just sit there for hours. I finished the pitch deck, but I have follow-up calls scheduled all afternoon. I need Wi-Fi and frankly I need quiet. I'll wait until you get the final diagnosis, but I'm going back home to work. I'll come back later tonight, promise." I stared at the text. He was going home. He was abandoning me, his mother, potentially facing emergency surgery, because his work from home was too important, and the ER waiting room was too loud. The sting of the rejection was worse than the pain in my side. I felt my eyes prickle with tears, but I blinked them back. I wasn't going to cry over him. I texted back a single cold word, "Okay." He didn't even reply to that. I watched the clock tick by in that sterile hospital room, hours melting away. I had no idea what was happening outside, or even what my next steps were medically. It felt like I was floating in a terrible, painful limbo. The doctor finally came back much later. "Miss Sophia, the good news is we caught this. It's an inflamed gallbladder likely caused by a stone. We need to admit you tonight and probably remove it tomorrow morning. It's a common procedure, but you'll need someone to drive you home after the recovery period." My heart sank a little. I had assumed Logan would be there, reluctantly perhaps, but there. Now I knew he wouldn't. He had already prioritized his life over mine once today. I had to tell the nurse that I was alone and had no immediate family present. It was humiliating. I had always been so independent, and now at 55 I was being admitted to the hospital and had to check the "no emergency contact present" box. I finally called Logan when I was settled into my room late that evening. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. Finally, he texted me back at 10:30 p.m. "Mom, I'm exhausted. Big day. Is everything okay? Just text me the plan. We'll talk tomorrow. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking selfishness of his message solidified the chilling reality. He wasn't just busy, he simply didn't care enough to inconvenience himself for me. He had left me in a moment of true need, not just at the ER but through the whole painful, scary process of being admitted. That night, lying in that hospital bed, pumped full of painkillers, I realized something dark and profoundly true about my son. And this realization, this quiet, painful truth, was the seed of everything that happened next. I knew I couldn't just let this slide. Not this time. Action item. If you've ever been left feeling completely alone by someone you thought cared about you, drop a comment right now and tell me the general place and time you were watching this video. For example, Chicago, 8 p.m. The surgery went well the next morning, but the emotional scars from Logan's abandonment were already deep. I had a friend, bless her heart, come pick me up and stay with me for the first night of recovery. Logan didn't even call until the day after I was home, and even then his call was brief, perfunctory, and clearly rushed. Glad you're okay, Mom. Gotta run. That was it. He abandoned me at the hospital. He chose his emails and his client calls over my physical and emotional well-being. And in that moment, I decided he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The balance of our relationship, which had always favored his needs, was about to shift. So, to really understand why Logan's abandonment hurt so much and why my eventual reaction was so extreme, you need the backstory. It's not just about a busy son. It's about a deeply ingrained pattern, a relationship where the emotional currency was always flowing one way, to him. My name is Sophia and Logan is my sun and my moon, even now when I have to admit he's a selfish jerk. I raised him primarily on my own. His father left when Logan was just 5. Deciding that the bachelor life and his golf habit were more appealing than parenthood. That meant I worked 2, sometimes 3 part-time jobs for years just to keep us afloat and ensure Logan had every opportunity. I missed school plays, I missed parent-teacher conferences, and I spent late nights prepping for my own work while he slept, but I did it all for him. Every sacrifice I made was a brick laid in the foundation of his future. And he did well. That's the bitter part of the irony. Logan is incredibly smart. He went to a top-tier university, majored in business, and quickly climbed the corporate ladder in a specialized tech consulting firm. He's now in his late 20s, has a fantastic modern loft downtown, drives a sleek black car, and wears suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He's the physical embodiment of the American dream I worked myself ragged to provide. The problem? His success came packaged with this thick, impenetrable layer of entitlement and emotional distance. The more successful he got, the smaller I seemed to shrink in his eyes. Our conversations had become these transactional check-ins. It was never, "How are you feeling, Mom?" It was, "Hey, I need you to sign this document," or, "Can you watch my cat while I'm on a business trip?" And always, there was the casual mention of his ridiculously demanding schedule. "I'm swamped, Mom," absolutely slammed. "I'm working 90-hour weeks." It was his badge of honor, but also his perpetual excuse. Every time I needed something, whether it was help moving a heavy box or just 5 minutes of genuine conversation, I was met with the same response. "I'm too busy, Mom." He'd talk about his clients like they were royalty. He'd rearrange his entire life to fly across the country for a potential business deal. But for me, I was a recurring appointment he kept trying to reschedule indefinitely. There's one specific memory that perfectly captures this shift. A couple of years ago I had a significant birthday, my 53rd. It wasn't a landmark like 50, but I was looking forward to a nice, quiet dinner with my son. I'd mentioned it weeks in advance. He confirmed he'd be there. That evening I dressed up, went to my favorite little Italian place and sat waiting. 6 p.m. 6:15 p.m. 6:30 p.m. I texted him, "Are you close?" He replied instantly, "Oh me Mom, I'm so sorry. A crisis came up with the East Coast team. I'm literally on a conference call in my car and I can't hang up. I'll make it up to you, I promise." I finished my expensive glass of wine alone, ate a plate of pasta that tasted like ashes and went home. The next day I saw a picture he'd posted on social media. A grinning selfie with a group of colleagues, all holding celebratory glasses of champagne, captioned, "Closing the massive deal tonight. Worth the late hours." He wasn't in his car. He was celebrating a business victory and my birthday was just collateral damage. He didn't even remember to mention it again, let alone make it up to me. That memory of him abandoning me at the Italian restaurant came roaring back while I was recovering from surgery, still sore and weak. It wasn't the pain medication, it was the clarity of the situation. I realized that my son, the man I had sacrificed everything for, saw me as an obligation, a minor inconvenience that popped up occasionally and needed to be managed or, as it turned out, ignored. It made me think about all the times he'd needed me. When he got dumped by his first serious girlfriend in college, I drove 4 hours round trip just to sit on his floor and let him cry, missing a major work deadline in the process. When he totaled his first car, I used my meager savings as a down payment for a reliable used replacement so he could get to his interviews. When he needed a co-signer for his swanky loft, I put my own financial security on the line without a second thought. I was his safety net, his emotional punching bag, and his personal bank, always available, always forgiving. But the moment the roles were reversed, the moment I needed him to simply sit in a comfortable chair and wait for an update on my health, he bolted. He ran back to his laptop, his precious schedule, and his curated, successful life. The friend who picked me up, bless her heart, her name is Ava and she's a saint. She was furious when I told her Logan had left. She helped me get settled, made me soup, and even organized my medication. She kept muttering, "That boy has some nerve, Sophia. Some nerve." Ava's practicality was a good counterpoint to my own simmering resentment. She reminded me, the hard part isn't that he's busy. It's that he thinks he's too important to care. He values the perception of success over the reality of family. And that's the layered conflict that was already brewing, even before the hospital incident. Logan didn't just abandon me. He abandoned the decades of unconditional love and sacrifice I had given him. He broke the fundamental unspoken contract between a mother and her child, that in a crisis you show up. When I finally got fully lucid a couple of days post-op, sitting on my couch wrapped in a fuzzy blanket, I looked at my phone. 2 texts from Logan over 48 hours, both essentially asking if I was okay, but with no offer to visit, bring food, or help with anything. He was treating me like a sick acquaintance, not his mother recovering from major surgery. And that's when I started to plot. This wasn't about petty revenge. This was about a lesson. A cold, hard dose of reality that needed to be administered before he completely lost his soul to his spreadsheets and his ego. Logan needed to feel what it was like to be truly, irrevocably alone when the chips were down. He needed to understand that the world doesn't revolve around his email inbox. I knew exactly how to make him feel it, and I was patiently waiting for the universe to hand me the perfect opportunity. The day I got home from the hospital marked the shift. I was still sore, relying on pain medication, and frankly feeling utterly depleted emotionally. But that emptiness was starting to fill with resolve. I maintained an icy distance from Logan. When he called, I kept the conversation brief, monotone, and strictly factual. The pain is manageable. Yes, I'm resting. No, I don't need anything. I wasn't being dramatic. I was withdrawing the lifeline he had taken for granted his entire life. The real conflict, the one that broke the camel's back, happened about a week after my surgery. I was still officially on recovery leave, meaning no heavy lifting, no strenuous activity, and mainly just sitting around my small, quiet house. Logan decided this was the perfect time to drop by unannounced. He showed up carrying one of those fancy gourmet meal kits, which, while expensive, felt less like a gesture of care and more like a performative act. "Hey Mom," he said, setting the bag down in the kitchen. "Thought I'd bring dinner. I figured you wouldn't be cooking." "That's thoughtful," I replied, but my voice lacked warmth. I didn't get up from the sofa. He immediately started pulling out his phone. "So look, I've got this huge meeting tomorrow and I need to review this legal document. It's about 100 pages. I was thinking, since you're just relaxing, maybe you could print this out for me? My printer at the loft is on the fritz and I need a hard copy to mark up tonight." I just looked at him. My fresh incision still felt tender, and he was asking me to go through the motions of logging onto his email, downloading a massive file, and then feeding 100 pages through my temperamental home printer. "Logan," I said, keeping my voice level, "I'm a week post-op from having an organ removed. I'm not supposed to be stressing or moving around unnecessarily." He sighed, the familiar sound of his inconvenience grating on my nerves. "Mom, come on. It's just pressing a button. It's not like I'm asking you to lift a truck. It'll take 5 minutes. This deal is worth millions. I have to review it." And there was the casual dismissal of my pain and the elevation of his business importance. It wasn't just a simple request. It was an emotional test he failed spectacularly. He couldn't see past his immediate need. "No, Logan," I said, finally sitting up straighter. "I won't print your documents." He frowned, genuinely perplexed. He was so accustomed to me saying yes that my refusal seemed to short-circuit his understanding of reality. "What? Why not? I'm here, I brought you dinner, I'm trying to be supportive. You can do this small thing for me, can't you?" This was the moment. The resentment from the hospital, the years of feeling like a resource, and the memory of that cold ER waiting room all bubbled up. "Let me tell you why not," I said, my voice quiet but cutting. "A week ago I was alone in an ER cubicle, potentially facing major surgery. I was scared. I was in excruciating pain. And I begged you to stay. You left, Logan. You left because the fluorescent lights of the hospital were inconvenient for your conference calls. You left me to face the doctors, the diagnosis, and the decision to remove an organ by myself." He started to wave his hand dismissively. "Mom, that's unfair. I was busy. That was a massive pitch. I checked on you later, I told you I'd come back." "No, you didn't come back," I cut in, not raising my voice, which made the impact stronger. "You texted. You sent a self-serving message about your exhaustion. You showed up today, a week later, with a bag of prepackaged food, not because you were worried about my healing, but because you needed a free printing service." I pointed to the meal kit. "You know what was actually supportive? Ava, my friend, dropping everything to pick me up, drive me home, and make me soup. She is not my daughter, yet she understood the basic human need for support in a crisis. You are my son and you abandoned me." His face flushed red, a mix of anger and guilt. Logan doesn't like being called out, especially on his selfishness. He lives in his bubble of success and importance, and I had just popped it. "You're just trying to guilt me," he muttered, picking up the meal kit bag. "You're always so dramatic. Fine. I'll go find a print shop." He spun around and walked out the door, slamming it behind him. He didn't even say goodbye, just stalked off, infuriated that his mother dared to have boundaries, especially boundaries rooted in his own cruelty. As the silence settled, I felt a wave of nausea, maybe from the pain meds, maybe from the confrontation. But beneath the nausea, there was a strange, empowering calm. I had finally told him the truth without softening the blow. He now knew exactly how I felt about his priorities. What he didn't know was that I was already mentally preparing for the moment I knew had to come. Logan lives a high-stakes life. One false move, one client screw-up, one major personal crisis, and his entire facade could crumble. And when that happened, and I knew it would, he would turn to the one person who always fixed his messes. Me. The memory of me sitting alone in that cold ER waiting area became my shield and my weapon. I was ready. I was waiting. The silence from Logan after our explosive argument about the printer lasted 3 agonizing days. 3 days where I knew he was stewing in his loft, convinced I was the unreasonable one, the overly emotional mother trying to derail his multi-million-dollar career with my drama. I didn't reach out. I focused on my healing physically and emotionally and tried to enjoy the quiet solitude. I was learning to be okay without relying on him, an uncomfortable but necessary lesson. Then at 11:30 p.m. on the third night, my phone rang. It wasn't a text, it was a full-on call. I looked at the screen, Logan, and my heart gave a heavy thump. He never called that late unless something was seriously wrong. I let it ring twice just to savor the small power shift before answering. "Hello." My voice was intentionally neutral, a calm, cool lake over deep, churning waters. His voice was unrecognizable. It wasn't the annoyed, entitled drone I was used to. It was frantic, high-pitched, and laced with genuine terror. He sounded like a cornered animal. Mom, you have to help me. I messed up. I messed up so bad." I kept the receiver a distance from my ear, waiting for the full catastrophe to unfold. "Slow down, Logan. What happened?" The story that spilled out was a messy tidal wave of poor judgment and massive consequence. Remember that huge deal he had to print the documents for? The multi-million-dollar client he was catering to? Well, he had been celebrating closing that deal a few nights ago with the client's younger executives. He drove them out to a trendy remote bar outside the city. On the way back, he was speeding, showing off his expensive car, and he blew through a stop sign on a dark road. And I prompted, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. And I hit something, Mom. I hit a parked car, and it wasn't just a parked car. It was a police car, he whispered, the gravity of the situation finally crushing him. An off-duty officer was inside, pulled over to take a call. He's okay, thank God, but my car is totaled and they arrested me. They booked me for reckless driving, vehicular assault, because the officer had a minor concussion, and a DUI. Logan, the meticulous, success-driven professional, had just torpedoed his life with a single reckless, selfish decision. He continued, his voice cracking. I used my one call from the station to reach my lawyer, but they set the bail absurdly high, $50,000. Mom, I don't have that kind of liquid cash. My money is tied up in investments and the down payment for the new office space. I tried calling friends, but no one is answering this late, and even if they did, none of them have that much cash on hand. He paused, a desperate, shuddering breath taken on the line. Mom, you have to help me. If I don't get out of here by tomorrow morning, I'm going to miss the signing ceremony. I'll lose the client, I'll lose my job, my reputation is ruined. Everything I've built is going to crash down. Please, Mom. You're my only option. You have the equity in your house. You can post the collateral for the bail bond. Please, I'm begging you. The plea was genuine. The fear was real. He was utterly stripped of his bravado and success, standing alone in a sterile holding cell, facing the grim consequences of his actions. This was his moment, his moment of absolute crisis where he needed his family more than his job, and he had nowhere else to turn. And I was sitting on my comfortable sofa, still tender from surgery, remembering the hard plastic chair I was forced to abandon. I remembered his text, I'm going back home to work. I'll come back later tonight, promise. I remembered the sound of his heavy, dismissive sigh when I had told him I was in pain. I took a long, slow breath, letting the silence hang on the line between us. I heard him sniffle, waiting for my automatic, yes. Logan, I finally said, my voice steady, betraying none of the swirling emotions inside me. I'm sorry this happened. It sounds awful. It is, Mom. It's terrible. So you'll do it? You'll call the bond agent. His voice was filled with a desperate, hopeful relief. I can't, I said. The word was soft, but it landed like a wrecking ball. The silence that followed was heavy, complete, and then utterly shattered by his explosion. You can't. What do you mean you can't? Mom, this is my career. This is my entire life. You have to. You're my mother. What about all those years you said you'd always be there for me? I was there for you, Logan, I said, leaning back, the fatigue of the past week finally catching up to me. I was there for you last week too. I called you from the ER, terrified and in pain, and you chose your client calls over your mother. You abandoned me in the hospital because your work was more important. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Mom, this is different. This is life and death for my career. That was just a medical inconvenience. That was my body, Logan. That was me. And my life was inconvenient for you, I corrected him, the edge hardening in my voice. You needed quiet and you needed Wi-Fi, so you left me alone. Now you need $50,000 and you need someone to fix your life, and you're calling me, acting like the last week didn't happen. This is revenge, he accused, his voice thick with disbelief and fury. You're taking revenge on me for being busy. No, Logan. This is a lesson, I stated. I'm not too busy. I am home, I am recovering, and I have the means to help you. But I am choosing not to. I am choosing my peace over your panic. I am choosing to let you face the natural consequences of your poor choices, just as I was left to face my health crisis alone. I could hear the sounds of the detention center in the background, a cacophony of fear and institutional harshness. He started pleading again, begging, listing all the things he would do, the money he would pay back, the time he would spend with me. Stop, Logan, I said firmly. I heard this all last week. I'll come back later, promise. I am not your automatic solution anymore. You need to sit there tonight, and tomorrow morning, you need to call that friend you think so highly of, or that client executive you were partying with. You need to find out what it feels like when the people you rely on are too busy for you. You need to experience being alone when the world is ending. I don't have anyone else, he wailed. Exactly, I said, a single tear finally tracking down my cheek, not of sadness but of pure, cold resolve. That's the lesson, Logan. You pushed everyone else away for your success. Now go sit with that success. I hung up. The absolute silence that followed was deafening. I had done it. I had applied the deep, painful pressure he deserved. But the story wasn't over. I had to let him suffer the consequences, but I also needed to ensure the lesson stuck without completely destroying the person I still, deep down, loved. I didn't sleep that night. The phone remained silent, but my mind was a whirlwind. Had I gone too far? Was I risking my son's entire future just to prove a point? Every time I started to waver, I pictured myself in the hospital bed, the sterile silence, and the knowledge that my child had prioritized a client deck over my crisis. The memory solidified my decision. Logan needed to hit absolute rock bottom before he could truly see the cost of his choices. The next morning I woke up and the first thing I did was call my friend Ava. I told her everything, the phone call, the plea, and my refusal. Ava, usually so fiery, was silent for a moment. "Sophia," she finally said, her voice soft, "that was cold. But necessary. So what's the plan? Are you really going to let him lose everything?" "No," I admitted. "I don't want him to be ruined. I want him to be reformed. He needs to lose the safety net, but only long enough to realize how vital it is." I waited until precisely 10 a.m. This was 3 hours after the signing ceremony he was supposed to attend, 3 hours after he would have missed his meeting, 3 hours of absolute panic and despair in the holding cell. He would have faced the devastating reality of his career crumbling and the complete silence from everyone he thought he could rely on. I called the law firm Logan used, spoke to his lawyer Mr. Harrison, and told him I was now willing to post the collateral for the bond. I instructed Mr. Harrison to coordinate the bail process immediately. "But Mrs. Sophia," Mr. Harrison said, sounding slightly confused, "Logan told me this morning you had refused." He was utterly distraught. He called me an hour ago saying he was looking at using a credit union loan or selling his car just to scrape together the funds. "Yes, well," I said calmly, "I changed my mind. I need to make sure he's released and gets home safe. However, Mr. Harrison, I have a very specific set of conditions for the release that I want you to convey to Logan as soon as he is out. These are non-negotiable." The conditions were the twist, the emotional closure that wasn't just forgiveness, but a fundamental restructuring of our relationship. About 2 hours later, I received a short, formal text from Logan. "I'm out. Thank you. Mr. Harrison told me about your conditions. I'll meet you at your house." When he walked into my living room, he wasn't the impeccably dressed, arrogant Logan of a week ago. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes were wrinkled, and the fear was etched deep on his face. He sat down hesitantly on the edge of the couch, not meeting my gaze. "Mom, thank you," he whispered, the entitlement completely gone, replaced by a raw, desperate humility. I don't know what I would have done. I missed the signing. I lost the client. I'm going to lose my job. I called everyone and nobody would help me. I truly thought I was going to lose everything." "You did lose everything, Logan," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "You lost your client, you lost your job prospects, and for a few miserable hours you lost your freedom. And that loss, that total desperation you felt, is exactly what I felt when you chose your conference calls over me in the ER. That's the lesson." I leaned forward. "Now about my conditions. I posted the collateral to get you out and I will stand by you through this legal mess, because that is what a mother does. But my help comes at a cost, not in money but in change. This is the new contract of our relationship." I laid out the 3 conditions, clear and precise. The priority shift. You are going to take a mandated leave from your consulting work, or find a job that is flexible for the next 6 weeks. During that time, you will spend at least half of your waking hours working with a local charity, ideally one that helps older or sick people with simple tasks, driving, errands, companionship. You need to learn the value of showing up for people who have no currency to offer you except their thanks. The reciprocity clause, the bail amount, the collateral I put up, is now secured by your assets, your loft, your car. You will pay me back every penny within the next 3 years. This is not because I need the money but because I need you to learn the accountability of debt and the value of my financial sacrifice. The presence mandate. For the next year, you will commit to 1 unscheduled, non-transactional visit with me every single week. No phones. No laptops. No discussing work. Just pure, unadulterated time with your mother. You need to learn how to be present, Logan. You need to learn how to be a son, not just a CEO. He listened, his head bowed, the fight gone out of him. When I finished, he looked up and for the first time in years I saw the vulnerable young boy I raised. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "That's fair. I understand. I was wrong. I was so arrogant and selfish. I treated you like an ATM and an inconvenience. I truly regret leaving you at the hospital. I thought I was too important for simple decency." He agreed to every condition. He took the 6-week leave, found a local senior support organization and started working. It was hard. He was humbled. He had to learn how to be a human being again, not just a business machine. The legal process was agonizing, but because he was working in the community, the judge eventually showed leniency, reducing the charges dramatically. Logan is still rebuilding his career, but our relationship is fundamentally different. He comes over every week, sometimes just to sit and watch a movie with me. He actually asks how I'm feeling and listens to the answer. He learned the hardest lesson possible, that success and money mean nothing when you are lying helpless in a cell or a hospital bed. The only thing that matters is having someone who cares enough to show up. I abandoned him in his moment of greatest crisis, yes, but only to force him to see the terrible truth of his own abandonment. It was a harsh, cold, and calculated move, but it was the lesson he needed to become the son I always knew he could be. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next family tale. And let me know in the comments below if you think I was too harsh, or if my tough love was the only way to save my son.